Well, NATO leaders have reaffirmed their support for Ukraine. Defense ministers from the alliance are meeting in Brussels. NATO's Secretary General says he wants to make sure that Russia is clear about the group's commitment to defending its territory. Well, the U.S. Defense Secretary has reaffirmed NATO's support for Ukraine.
Our presence here sends a signal to the world that we remain united in our support of Ukraine, and we condemn Russia's unprovoked and unjustified invasion into Ukraine. And so Ukraine has a legitimate and sovereign government, and certainly we support their ability to defend themselves.
Okay, let's bring in our diplomatic editor, James Bays. He's covering that NATO summit for us. He's joining us from Brussels. So, James, tell us what we should be expecting.
Yeah, this is the first NATO meeting of defence ministers since the war started. They'll be briefed on the current developments. They're also going to hear from the Ukrainian defence minister, who is beaming into this meeting virtually to join it. Of course, this meeting just 8 days before all the NATO leaders at summit level will be meeting here in Brussels, including President Biden, who's going to be coming to Europe to see NATO and EU leaders. When it comes to NATO, they've already done a great deal. There's NATO countries individually have supplied weaponry to the Ukrainians, but also they've bolstered their own defences, those countries that are closest to Russia. One of the things they're going to be discussing at this meeting is making some of those changes more permanent. This is what the NATO Secretary General had to say.
We'll also address the more long-term consequences, the long-term adaptation of our alliance, how to further strengthen our deterrence and defense, and to remove any room for miscalculation or misunderstanding in Moscow about our readiness to protect and defend all allies. NATO has the responsibility to ensure that this crisis do not escalate beyond Ukraine, and that's also the reason why we have increased the presence in the eastern part of the alliance.
So some of the things they're likely to discuss too, recent incursions by drones into NATO territory, that attack in Ukraine but close to the Polish border on a base where we believe that there were foreign trainers of the Ukrainian military, and the recent development of the last 24 hours where 3 NATO leaders, 3 prime ministers went into Ukraine, to Kiev. Their representatives, their ministers of defense will be briefing their colleagues at this meeting, which is about to start any moment.
All right, thank you so much. Our diplomatic editor, James Bays, reporting from Brussels.